Yeah, maybe that's like a thread of this whole conversation is like, what's your why in everything that you're doing? Question yourself. Seriously object to your own shit. Is that your fear talking or is that really your heart?
We're live. Ziggy's chilling.
He's here. If you have any questions for him, he's ready.
Jen, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Round 2.
Round dos.
Almost 3 years. December 2020 or December 2019.
Was it? 3 is my magic number. Do you know that? It is, of course.
How are things? I know things won't be the same.
Mm-hmm.
You've been on the move. I'm glad we caught you while you're in town.
Yep.
And you're going to be jetting off, back on the road in a few days.
Yeah.
How is everything? We can talk about the salon. We can talk about babes behind brands. We can talk about Ziggy, whatever.
Whatever strikes.
Yeah. Like has your perspective on life changed, as many of us, if not all of us, due to the pandemic?
Absolutely. I feel like everything shifted for me back to basics.
Okay.
Back to like my core values, really digging into and refining like, who are you now? Who do you want to be moving forward? What's staying and what's going?
Yeah.
And so I dropped a lot of old beliefs, a lot of old habits, a lot of transitions of people moving in and out of my life. And it's been, I want to say, a big period of release.
Okay. Was it forced, or you kind of just did that on your own?
It happened so naturally.
Okay.
It happened so naturally. Things would shift and then that decision would make sense. And things would shift and then that person would come in and that person would leave. And it was all organic.
Okay.
And it all happened, I believe, divinely inspired, very naturally. To where I was like, okay, this is what we're doing now.
The last time I saw you in person, we grabbed coffee and lunch, and you were asking how you could outfit the bus with some Gopros.
Yes.
Did that ever happen?
Okay, Victor, I hate GoPros. I have to tell you, I don't know what it is for me. Maybe it's because they're so little.
Okay.
I can't mess with the GoPros. It's like not for me. So then I decided, this is so funny that you asked me, because someone told me to ask another friend of mine who started a podcast. He's like, you need to ask a podcaster. I'm like, I did. And he gave me all the inspiration. But what I've kind of learned about myself in simplifying and going with that same pattern that we were just talking about, I don't know if it's like the most cool or whatever, but I'd really like to just do it all from my phone. Run and gun. I'm not a techie Becky. Okay. I'm just not.
There is some transitional stuff from honestly, you press a button, it records, but then you have to upload that material onto your computer, cut it up if you want. So if you're more of that's what stories are great for, like this behind the scenes, just press, on your phone. And phones are, they do so much these days. So whatever fits in with where you're at in life, whatever. At least you're still sharing.
Exactly. I'm actually, when I leave next week, I was telling you I'm taking my longtime employee on a work wife anniversary trip. And we're going to test everything out in the van now that everything works, with the lighting that I have and the sound, and I'll bring mics and kind of see what would make sense. So I'll let you know.
So you see the fans and stuff. So the cameras overheat. And I've had cameras just shut off on me because of I'm too hot, I got to turn off.
No way.
So that's why the fans are here. And if that wasn't the case, I would have asked if we could do it in the bus.
Oh my God, I would have loved that. Next time. Rainn
Wilson from The Office used to have a show called Metaphysical Milkshake, and it'd be in a Volkswagen style bus.
That's my dream, is to be able to. I've been calling myself an evangelist. I'm a preacher's daughter. I told him that and he was not very pleased. Because my dad's in a small town in Alabama. He doesn't quite get it. He thinks yoga's a cult a little bit. And I'm like, Dad, I promise it's not. Yeah. He's just not exposed. He's just not exposed to that. But I was like, Dad, I think it's so cute because I'm sharing my love for wellness and personal development and health. I'm kind of like an evangelist. Get it? And he's like, baby, what does that mean? Are you sharing the word of the Lord? I'm like, well, in my own way, yes, I am. In my own way.
Right.
It's just kind of funny. That's how I see it. You know, he taught me when I was young that he felt a certain calling to make that transition to go and be a pastor.
Okay.
And learn and go to school, seminary school and all that. I was like not even a year old.
Oh, wow.
When he left to go do that. And he was in his 30s. So it's not the typical college student, not the typical situation. And there was so many times where I didn't understand that. I'm like, how could you do that?
Oh, sure.
Right? Like
sure.
You're a kid and you don't understand. Now as an adult and feeling like during the pandemic, the decision I made about the van and to remove myself from my business the way that I did and shift felt super wild to a lot of people because it didn't follow the natural progression of what others were doing. For me, I was like, I don't know, man. I woke up one day and I heard that I was supposed to do this. And I even was like, we're living in a van? I'm talking to myself. Really? Okay. But I knew that there was something bigger, a bigger purpose for what I was doing.
Okay.
And I knew it was bigger than just the salon. The salon had laid the foundation for how much I loved interacting with people on an intimate level because we see them in the service that we do and they're naked. So you have to be able to find a level of comfort very fast.
Yeah.
And it was always my skill set. And when the pandemic happened, I'm like, there's more work for you to do. How can you do it differently? I didn't want to feel chained to any city. I don't know where I want to plant roots next. I do believe it's in the mountains somewhere, TBD. But I wanted to be able to allow myself to explore what that looked like.
Yeah.
And the van just was the right fit. But there were so many times where I was asking myself, like, oh my God, are you for real?
Was the seed for van life planted a while ago? Like pre-pandemic or?
Nope.
No. Okay.
It was all pandemic.
It was all pandemic.
It was me, edibles, and lockdown. If we're being fully transparent, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I had a lot of time to sit and think, and I'd always wanted to travel, and I never had the means to do it. I kind of always thought like I almost felt like it wasn't ever going to happen for me. And then when the pandemic happened, I'm like, who cares? Do whatever you want. This is like a free-for-all out here.
It's true.
And that's how I felt. It's so funny. My grandparents used to travel in a camper van, in an old VW, which was my original dream.
Oh, yeah.
But you can't really get those. And then I learned a lot about fixing those if I had problems on the road. So I had to make some decisions. But I'm like, those are just so darling.
You're surrounded by a lot of handy people.
I really am. Do you know how they paid for that? My little tiny grandma Dora.
Yeah, how?
4'11". She's a walker. She's where I got my Urban Hike Love from.
Okay.
We would walk and walk and walk. She'd always walk her little legs off. She used to walk back in the day and collect cans. And if you turned them in for 5 and 10 cents, you got money. I don't even know if they still do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. She would collect them every day on her walks. And that's how they paid for their vacations. And they just went to national parks and, beautiful places that don't cost $1 million. And I always just thought that was so amazing. And now I'm like kind of recreating that in my own way. It's so funny how life works that way.
Did you think right now, because the last 2 years feels like it's a blur.
I know.
Right? Where did you think of any big picture of like where you'd be with the van, with the business? Any idea? Was there a point where you thought you'd lose where the business would be gone, right?
Oh, the van decision.
Because it was like riots, it was pandemic, and you didn't know if, people were going to loot, all that stuff.
All of it. And I have to say, the decision for the van was spurned. I really didn't believe we were going to reopen. It was, if you remember back on that time, it was every 3 or 4 days, our mayor was going to come on and tell us what our fate was. And I'm like, thanks, like, great. And you were on this roller coaster, and then that would happen, and you really wouldn't get any answers.
Yeah.
And I'm the type of person from my life experience. This isn't my opinion. It is my life experience that I could give foundational data on. People in power in those kind of roles, for me, haven't ever been serving my best interest. Mm-hmm. I know that from experience. I remember when the police used to come to my house all the time when my parents were fighting and all of those issues, and they couldn't help me because of whatever red tape. It's not like it was personal, but whatever red tape and however the laws were, they couldn't help me. And then there's a series of different experiences that I had where I was like, I'm sorry, and I'm Cuban. We don't believe in a lot of government. That's just how we're raised, man. And it's not from opinion, it's from experience of those people. So I was just like, I don't trust you. and I don't trust you, and I don't believe you're working on my behalf. I don't believe when you tell people we'll fix the windows, but we have to fix this. You're not coming to fix my windows.
Yeah.
And no insurance company is looking to pay me out for that in any kind of, quick fashion. And there's only so many window companies that can service us. So it was just a roller coaster of me feeling like that's bullshit. And I have to figure out what I need to do for myself. And if that comes back around and works out, amazing. And so I made decisions based on those feelings, intuition. And they haven't been wrong for me. Even when we did reopen after 90 days, the restrictions that we had and the change in habit from our clients, and then the clients that left and moved, that has been interesting to see in just the last year.
A lot of people left the city.
A ton.
Yeah.
People that had the means were like, I don't want to live like this. I woke up and decided, like, I don't want to live like this. I don't want to place myself surrounded by violence if I don't have to. So I got crafty, which is my specialty. And I said, well, we have like a year until this thing kind of balances out with restrictions and travel and weddings and parties coming back. There's not a huge need for me to be here. I don't think it's best for my mental health for me to be here and always feel fight or flight, whatever. So I'm going to go build this van and invest in something that I can at least know I can get a return on. I can sell it and get my money back. But sitting here in Chicago waiting on my master's to tell me what I'm allowed to do next doesn't seem like the best use of my time. So that's kind of what spurred that decision.
And this whole time you had to cover the costs of the business the entire time.
Yeah, nobody gave me concessions. There was no rental concessions. So I had, the salon rent, which was big. We're a storefront, huge windows, beautiful prime area. And then across the street, I was living in, my city apartment. Right. Tiny little studio, but big price tag. So I started doing what I do best and getting crafty. I'm like, okay, something has to go. So I got rid of my apartment, and I knew I was going to do the van. I got rid of my apartment. I gave away all my belongings. I didn't even want to sell it. You know why? I don't even want to wheel and deal with you. I don't even care. I just want to give it to somebody who will appreciate it because people have done that for me. So that felt right. Like the idea of someone being like, I'll give you $250 for your couch. I'm like, I don't even want it. I don't even want your damn money. I don't need it. I don't even want it. I didn't want any part of it. So that felt good. And I offloaded. And started getting creative. I talked to a friend who does real estate just to bounce this idea. I'm like, hey, I know they're not really, like, Airbnbs weren't a thing for a while. They couldn't really operate because people weren't traveling to the city. I'm like, do you think I could find one and they'd give me like half off to stay there? And like, because they're not able to use it and I'm doing it short term, I don't know. I was trying to get crafty. She's like, I actually have one in my basement.
I remember that.
I said, you do?
Yeah.
And she had a little girl.
Traded services.
She had a little girl. Her and her husband were working from home with a 3-year-old, which is literally impossible. I mean, they could hurt themselves at any time.
Yeah.
So when I got there, they, of course, like didn't want to take money from me or anything like that. They were doing the neighborly thing and like the village mentality of we're all here to take care of each other. So the second I learned, well, here's how I can contribute. Let me take care of her. My schedule's flexible now because we're doing 6 clients a day when we were doing 46 clients a day.
Wow.
Really brutal. And I didn't even want to think about that. So I'm like, let me diversify my time so I don't think about that. And I got to spend time with this beautiful child and help the family. And it was just such a beautiful exchange that it like set the tone for this whole experience.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be cultivating our village and helping each other in all the ways that we can help. It's not supposed to be just on these parents. It's not supposed to be just on me. It's just, I don't believe that that's the way that we're designed.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the beautiful starting point to this whole adventure 2 years ago.
And with the number of clients being reduced, another source of income was creating merch.
Oh my God, yeah.
Right?
You remember?
Yeah.
I just saw some of those come up on
doing
my
your
story.
own everything yourself.
It was so beautiful.
It was tie-dyed, right? And then you shifted yourself like.
I had never tie-dyed before. First of all, let me tell you that I am not that cool. So I remember people doing that when I was a kid. We had all of this merch that if clients wear the wrong clothes, because with spray tans, it's important that you don't wear the wrong clothes. So we had all this black merch because they don't get the spray tan on them. And I was sitting in my apartment, like staring down at my dead empty salon and my dead plants and like all the deadness. And I'm like, this is such a bummer. And then I kind of got this inkling, like people were talking about tie-dye or buying tie-dye things. And I was like, I'm doing a tie-dye party on Instagram Live. Come do it with me. Where I literally made myself sick because I had never done it before. So I'm doing it in my tub with the bleach. And I'm like, hold on. This is not good. Hold on, excuse my dogs. Lady, thank you. Come here. This is real life podcasting. But so I started doing that, and that after we finished the final product, and there wasn't that many people on the live, like a couple hundred people on the live, and lady, I need you to be quiet, please. Thank you so much. People were DMing me like, can I buy that? And I'm like, yeah, you could totally buy that. So then I put it out there like, hey, I'll make this for you, because I didn't really have anything to occupy my mind at the time. And I started making them, and people were like, can you make one for me and my sister, and can you send it to her? I'm like, yeah, I can do anything. And it became this thing, and it started breathing life into this thing. And
what did it say on the
babes
shirts?
Support babes.
Gotcha, yeah.
And it was so cool because, you know, people were afraid to see each other. They were afraid to interact. So I would like make all the tie-dye in the salon hair sinks, put them in trash bags, wet, which I couldn't figure out why I was having such back problems. Like, this shit is so heavy. So then I would put them on my back, walk them across the street, dry them, fold them, and then I would text people and be like, I'm on my way. And I would walk them to them and like be downstairs and ring the doorbell. Hey, dude, here's your stuff. And it was this beautiful way for people to at least feel like happy about something, excited about something. They were helping me. I was excited.
Yeah.
It was just the most beautiful thing. And it turned out to be where then we started shipping them wholesale. Like I started doing them and shipping them to other salons that couldn't work. A lot of salons in California because they were shut down for like
So not
9
even your
months.
licensees, like other salons.
Anybody.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was sending them to them at wholesale so that they could sell them and do the same thing. And it became this like beautiful way to engage when things were, you know, very different.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure that's very eye-opening to what everyone was craving, that human connection. And did that further reinforce that fan build, or just to get on the road and just like, did you like the pivot to more babes behind brands? Okay.
I just felt like I knew instinctively that we had like a year. When we reopened, I knew we had a year of like, we're going to flatline. We're probably not going to make money because of restrictions. So it just made the most sense to me to at least do something where I could connect with people. When I went to Florida, Florida was very open. It was very different scenario. I still wasn't really seeing that many people because I was just focused on the van build, but it had a different quality, you know, of life. And that was important to me, especially when we couldn't really do much here.
Yeah. With, I guess going back to the salon, like, was it hard to, like, what was the dynamic between your team?
When?
Because, I mean, it was hard to, you had to cut costs. And if clients weren't coming in, did you have to, like, reduce your team members?
What ended up happening is, like, once we realized that it wasn't going to be just 2 weeks, I knew instinctively that day. So I remember being in the salon on a Saturday, and I had just come back from Brooklyn because we were looking to open there. And I came back.
What a 180. That's wild.
I know. I came back the day before we shut down. We did an event in the space. And the next day when they shut down, 2 weeks. And I knew in my heart, I felt it. I was like, it's not just 2 weeks. That's just not going to happen. I don't even know why I knew that, but I knew that. And so I'm crying, and the girls are like, it's going to be okay. It's just 2 weeks. I'm like, it's just really not just 2 weeks. I just knew it.
Yeah.
I just knew that.
You start hearing it like in Europe and in Asia, and you're like, it's not going to happen. It can't come here. It came.
So what ended up happening was, you know, everybody had to go on leave and on unemployment, which was the best move for them. Like they ended up getting great money from that. And that was the only way that we'd be able to survive. Thank God for that. But then everyone had to make their own decisions based on where they were at in life, based on their new goals. The whole world changed.
A lot of new entrepreneurs came out of the pandemic too. I
found in my industry, everybody wanted to be their own boss after this.
Sure.
There was a class of a lot of people that wanted to be their own boss, and there was a class of people who still, that's also not their role because it's not for everybody. But I found, it's interesting, when I go back and look at the history of employees that I've had over 13 years, we've produced at least 20 entrepreneurs.
Nice.
And I'm like, that's not so bad. You know, they may not always leave loving me for whatever reason because I can push limitations. I'm going to push you out of your comfort zone because I want better for you. Because I think you can do better. I'm a coach at heart forever.
Okay.
Always have been. I'm like, well, it does say something though. So I'm taking that as a win for sure. But literally 90% of my staff didn't come back, which was not something I was expecting. But it was a shift that needed to happen in order for me to live my best life and in order for them to live their best life. So it worked out. At the time, it was just really hard to experience. And there was a lot of reflection and learning from that. But I wouldn't change it. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for that.
How has it been playing catch-up as, you know, wedding season is like twice as fast and twice as many now. And that just like,
it's been brutal.
You're in that territory, right? So
it's been brutal. And you know what else is there is still a lot of people who have a 2019 mentality on how they're going to be serviced.
Oh,
we don't have receptionists anymore. We can't answer your call immediately. We don't have the capacity. So we kind of changed where if you call in, there's a message and then text us because that's easier for us to respond to. So changing people's habits in that way has been really fascinating, but better for the business because we had to lean out everything.
Sure.
We had to get rid of anything that wasn't working and then find new ways to find things that did work. Yeah. So that has just been very much of a learning opportunity. But I love those things. I love the challenge. I'm like, let's do it. That's fine. You can burn me down, but I always come back. So go ahead. Come at me, dude. That's kind of the mentality that I live by. I always have.
Right.
So
how did your other licensees fare?
They did well. Okay. They did well. Our South Carolina store, they did well. They had because they're on a college campus. Okay. You know, primarily in that town is the college, and then it's a capital. So they've done really well, and they've done something really interesting we've been working on for months. You know, we cut services down to just our core services, simplified. That was really beautiful. For years, like 7 years, it was all about parties, bachelorette parties and bridal parties and all those things. Right.
Now it's back to individual.
Back to basics.
Gotcha.
So they've been able to, now they're sharing space with another salon.
Oh, okay.
And that's been so cool to be able to help them out. Sure. They had problems with their lease and we're like, we got room. Let's make it work. So building like a true community has been beautiful. It's been such a beautiful thing to witness and experience and kind of inch towards. In Chicago, we offloaded our blowout services, our makeup services. All of those were not going to come back. And I leased out the space to other independent artists. So we're all working under one space, but everyone's a separate entity. And that's been fascinating and beautiful to experience and helpful from a financial perspective. We needed it. So thank God for all these pivots, but damn, they were brutal. They were really brutal. I was like, what is next?
I'm still standing.
Gosh. What else? You know?
With the van build, did you think it would take this much, and was your budget anywhere close to what you've been spending on it? Because I'm for selfish reasons, I want to do the van life eventually myself, right?
Yeah. So. And you know what's really funny about the van life for me and the whole build? It wasn't just for me. I knew instinctively the whole time. And going back home to where I'm from in Florida, I got to really see that from people from my past that I got to visit with. Yeah. They were like, dude, you're doing it. Even though, you know, I had this one picture of success and everybody's like, you have all these places and you're doing all these things and that looks like success. And then you burn it all down and you're still willing to build it back in a new way. And I think it gave a lot of people a different set of hope, even though their lives weren't as changed as ours here in the city. It very much different based on the market.
Sure.
Very much. But I would notice that in my conversations. I'm like, man, this is giving this dad who's like doing his best and going to his office thing and has a happy life, a little bit more of a spark. That's worth it.
Yeah.
And I found when I went home, like just this resurgence of energy for the most part. There were some people who were like, what the hell are you doing? You're literally ruining your life.
Oh.
You like are making a huge mistake. And I'm like, that's fine. I'm still going to do it. I appreciate your opinion, but I'm still going to do it. Like, love me anyway.
Yeah.
I'm still going to do it. If I make a mistake, it's mine. I'm not going to ask you to clean it up. So I did lose friends in a lot of ways because my life was like scary to them. And I think they see vans and they think I'm going to like sleep in a Cracker Barrel on the side of the road. I'm like, I'm not that girl. I love that people can do that. I'm not built like that. I'm also like, it's a testament to facing your fears because it's not the most comfortable thing for me to sleep somewhere strange at night. But I think it's building this trust back in the world that I needed.
Yeah.
You know, people will offer to help me that you wouldn't even expect. And then you're like, that makes so much sense. I'm going to accept that help. Or like different ways that I'm finding to find places to stay, you know, tend to be like really beautiful experiences. So I'm like, I'm learning a lot.
So on one hand, you know, your faith in humanity has been restored, and then there's still awful things going around the world.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I noticed if I focus too much on what's happening in the world, because I think there's a lot of like, I'll call it Wizard of Oz action. That was my favorite movie growing up as a kid. Like, you don't know who's behind that door managing everything. I know what feels true to me in a lot of ways. But so much of it is just so insane that I'm like, I can't get wrapped up into that, or else I will never move forward. I found in the very beginning of the van build in the pandemic, like I was on city pace. I think I told you about that. I was like, let's do it. I knew it could be done in 2 or 3 months. Well, I got to Florida and they're all busy. Not like here. Everyone was like looking for work. They were all busy. I was like, oh, damn, this is not going to happen as fast as I think. And internally, I was struggling with that because I had this timeline in my mind and that made sense and I had to do it.
I thought it was a really quick turnaround. And I was like, yeah, she'll be back by, you said November or December.
Yeah.
And
No.
she's still down there.
But you know what I think it was, Victor? And I know that you'll appreciate this because we've had conversations like this before. I had a lot that I wanted to learn and uncover about my family, generational traumas, lineage, all of that. So the first time when I went down there, it happened to be all about the masculine energy of my family. All about that. I was presented with all of these different moments where I got to see what it was like, what my own masculine energy was like, how it affects my life and other people's life. And I was like, wow, I've learned so much about myself and my history that I think is very beneficial to anyone that I meet. Then I came back to Chicago for the summer, half finished with the van. I'm like, wah, wah. So I came back like, damn it. I still had this cloud over my head. Like, how am I going to get this done? And had to come back for the summer because we got really busy, thank God, in 2021. And then when that calmed down again, I went back because I had a little bit left to finish, and then I had a sick pup. So he needed surgery. I was like, I'm not going to have him have surgery on his bottom, you know, TMI, if that's TMI for anybody, and then be in like 20 degrees trying to go to the bathroom, and it's city and it's gross. Like, let's give you the snowbird season that you deserve. So we went down there, had the surgery. I got to experience again, and it was all about the feminine. I was like,
really?
Well, aren't you checking
How did
universe?
that work out?
I don't know if it's because I was so open to
Were
it.
different people or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So when I went back, I actually stayed with my cousin, my baby cousin, who's like 3 years younger than me. But the last time I had lived with her was when I was 18. And my mother went to prison. And so like all of us kids kind of dispersed to our places. So she got to see me in that time. She reminded me of all of these experiences. She reminded me that at that time, lady, sorry, ladybug, bird, come here, come over here. Everyone can hear you yelling. Quite embarrassing for you. Quite embarrassing for you. Let's relax. Thank you. She reminded me that when I was living with her, I would have her like sleep in the bed with me. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, you were afraid to sleep by yourself. I'm like, what do you mean? I didn't remember any of that. She's like, Jen, you used to sleep with scissors under your pillow. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? But at that time, I had testified against my mom. So that created a series of events where she was going to go to prison. Not only because of that, but it wasn't helpful. But that for me was the right thing to do. I was like, no, this is the right thing to do. And so she was following me and like chasing me.
Oh, wow.
And we had gone from living in motels where you like always hear somebody outside your door. They weren't like the nicest motels. So like you just heard a lot of like foolery
Commotion and
chaos and
loitering,
riffraff. So I never slept well. So when I got there, it just took a very long time for me to decompress. Now, flash forward 20 something years, I come back from living in Chicago in chaos and violence, people would follow me down the street during the riots and be like, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill your dogs. I'm like, why would you want to do that? Leave me alone. All I want to do is go for a fucking walk. Leave me alone.
This happened?
Yeah, it happened more than once.
Did anything, like, what would you do? What would you do? What did you do?
One time
you just kept walking? Like, what?
Yeah. One time it was a kid out of a car, and I was like, are you okay,
like a
child?
drive-by or?
Yeah, it was like a woman driving, and the woman just kept straight like this. And the kid, and she was so angry, Victor, that I'm like, how could you possibly? She's like, hey, I'm going to kill you. And I'm like, what? I'm going to kill you and I'm going to kill your dogs. I'm like, don't talk about my dogs. You know, I was so mad. But it was just like madness. And then when I would walk down the street, all I do on the weekends, sorry to be a spoiler, I'm not that fun, but I am fun. But what I wanted to do is just go on my walks.
Yeah.
I love walking in the city. I would meet people, especially with dogs. You'd meet all kinds of people. And that was all I wanted to do. And I would go and walk, and like dudes would come up behind me, you know, so close, like so close. Like, we're in your neighborhood now, bitch. We're going to get, I'm like, can't you just leave me alone?
I've never heard anything like this before.
Yeah, I might just be lucky. That was my experience.
Yeah. Oh my God. No, that's still very traumatizing.
I know. So when I got back there was like a whole period of rest that my nervous system needed to relax and know that I was safe. I remember the first day that I got to Tampa, and I was staying on this beautiful little island where like old people go retire. It's amazing. So you could walk around there. It was like Tom Brady's neighborhood. So you could walk around there. Ain't nobody going to bother you. I was like, oh, this is beautiful. Birds are chirping. There's life. I was right by the water. And all I wanted to do was walk. So I walked, and I was right downtown, and nothing was boarded up, and nothing was like awful. And there wasn't like bottles in the street where everybody had been drinking all day. And I'm just like, oh, it's not like this everywhere. I was
Florida
living
gets a
in
bad
bubble.
rep.
Florida does. And I've kind of like gone ham on a few people a little bit lately about it, protecting it, because the way I think about a lot of the media, like the stories that you hear is not the reality. It's not. And there was a lot of shit talked about Florida and how they handled things, but none of my friends there lost what I lost. And nobody there lost their peace of mind and their peace and their sense of like well-being. I'm going to be fine walking down the street. I felt that way. They didn't feel that way there. Florida's like this, like, don't start anything with me and there will be no problems ever.
Yeah.
And they're good old boys, and people want to work. There's a lot of retirees, good old boys. There's a lot of Hispanics like myself, and they just want to work and be left alone. Just leave me alone. Let me do my thing.
Yeah. I'm curious what the, what the COVID death toll was compared to places that were more conservative with, vaccinations and masks. With Florida, I haven't looked into that.
We need to fact check that and see. I would be very curious.
Yeah.
I would be very curious about that.
And, with the number of unknowns from COVID, many states were probably playing it conservative, and I think that's where a lot of the flack came from. But yeah, I mean, there's always three sides to a story, right? It's your side, their side, and the truth, right? Yeah. So
my stepdad always used to say that. Yeah, he always used to say that. But even lately, I'll see people post like how much they hate Florida, or the eye roll emoji when they're going into Florida. I'm like, but you're still going to vacation there, so it can't be too bad. You need to pick a lane. You need to pick and like stand on your choice versus being so permeable where you just want to do what's the popular opinion because you don't want to not be liked. I'm okay if you don't like me.
Yeah.
But Florida did me right in a lot of ways, so God bless Florida.
Yeah. It's been so nice to see the number of people like just helping with the van build, and although it's like off the schedule, like take your time, it's just, you can't rush these things. You want to do it right, because personally, I'm not that handy, and I think I'd want to learn more things before living in something and in case something were to go wrong. So to be very familiar with the electrical and the water and everything, definitely take your time.
Yeah, and I learned so much along the way. Like you said, there were so many different people that stepped in to help, which goes back to it takes a village mentality, right? I had to learn that like it wasn't about the end result. It was about all those moments in between.
Yeah.
So I got to work with like people that I love, amazing families, all these people that stepped in that I would have never guessed. My friend and her husband, they have 2 twin boys too, who are my homies. They stepped in and big time helped me out when I came to a bottleneck. I was like, oh my God, I have no more help. I would have never imagined. And it was like the most beautiful experience. And I got to be with them and spend time with them and be helpful in the ways that I'm helpful. It was just so rewarding that I was like, this had to happen on this timeline.
Yeah.
You had to be forced to slow down even more. You thought you were Zen, Jen, and good job. You're doing great. There's more. There's always more. There's always another layer. And that was probably my biggest takeaway is like, there's always another layer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. When we were talking earlier how, you know, you might have been as open as you could have been previously, but then you came to a realization that there's always more. To be open.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, what other, you know, like the pandemic helped you realize like what's truly important. And then Ziggy being sick also helped you realize and slow down. And so I know you really haven't had an issue saying no to people, but how much more like prioritized like is your life these days?
So much more. I would say I'm like a reformed people pleaser. For sure.
Okay.
And then also reformed savage. So it's literally
savage as far as like hustler culture or like what?
Hustler culture, just like the way that I've had to navigate the world since I was young and really like make sure that I took care of myself no matter what. That's fine.
Yeah.
And it serves a purpose.
Yeah.
But it's not the way to get you to a beautiful life, I don't think. You know, when you're dealing with fight or flight, lady.
Yeah.
When you're dealing or you're in fight or flight all the time, it's not the most helpful way to be. And I feel I've learned this from COVID. Different people experienced it differently. Some people were like, I wasn't traumatizing at all. It was fine. They didn't even care about the violence. They're like, nah, I don't know. Maybe they're desensitized to it in a way that I'm not. But I think based on like where you come from, it brought up all of my traumas almost for revision. Okay. So I'm sitting there in my 500 square foot apartment for those 90 days, not knowing what's going to happen with my business, not knowing what's going to happen with my life. And all of these things of like, you're going to lose all your money. You're not going to have anywhere to live. You have to start over. You know, you're on your own. It's you with you. You know, just seeing how all of the pieces kind of played out. And I had to be able to reevaluate that and establish what was true and what was just my mind playing with me. And just old traumas coming up to revisit to say, have you healed me? Do you understand me? Or do you want to kind of repeat some of this stuff? I'm like, I don't want to repeat none of that. So as far as my boundaries and...
What would have repeated it been look like?
I mean, panicking. Panicking with the financial losses were huge. Huge.
And that's so subconsciously strong for you to even realize that.
I mean, I had placed all of this energy into if you work hard, and think about this because the world told us this, the Gary V's of the world, the Tony Robbins, and there's some truth to it as well, but I learned that there's also some untruth to it. If you put your head down and work for 10 years, you can have everything you want, right? That's what we're taught. I did that, and a pandemic just threw all that out of the window. Because it was like, no, overnight, I was in the best financial position of my life. 0 debt, 0 loans, nothing. I'd never taken on any of that. Because I'm Cuban, we don't like owe nobody money. So we put it under our mattress. Thank you so much. But yeah, I got a chance to revisit that and kind of see how I wanted to experience that. And I made choices. I was like, I'm not going to believe that this is the end for me or for this chapter. It's just like a shift. And I can shift with it or I can fight and resist it. And I just told myself I'm not going to fight and resist it. If I would have stayed here for those snowbird seasons that I call them, I felt like it would have been me resisting what was trying to come through. And what was trying to come through was like, you can do this different. This can look different for you. You can make this whatever you want. And so we did.
How active was Bays Behind Brands before, like pre-pandemic?
Gosh, pre-pandemic, I was traveling, I was hosting retreats, I was hosting workshops, I was speaking at big conventions. So that was like lighting me up inside. That goes back to that evangelist mentality. I love it. I'm like a preacher in my own right, and I love what I do, and I love connecting with an audience. So not being able to do that was a bummer. You know, we were going to do a huge Canada event in September of 2020 in Banff, Canada. I know. Oh. I'm telling you, when I see
There's
Banff,
one place to settle down.
I know that water. Have you ever seen that water?
I've seen it from Glacier National Park.
Insane.
Yeah.
So, you know, all of the momentum kind of came to a halt. We did a virtual event. That was really fun. Just trying to like help people stay positive and stay hopeful. There was one day where I did like 50 calls in a day. I was like, I can give you 15 minutes. And I'm also, from a coaching perspective, trying to help people in a situation where I don't even know how to help myself. I don't know the right answer. I don't know what the hell's going to happen. We used to be able to trend and forecast and know and use data. Well, our data's gone. Still gone. So that was a really eye-opening experience. But what I learned was I felt intuitively, I'm just supposed to show up for people. And the rest will work itself out. And I found that when I was in Florida, I got to visit with a lot of business owners that I love down there and new ones that I met. And we had amazing experiences. Theirs were different, but I learned something from that. Or I would do a lot of calls with people. And now I stop. When I'm planning my routes, I kind of try to like forecast, okay, who do I know that's in this general area and route to suit that so that I can see the people that I really care about. And that's been amazing, amazingly rewarding, amazingly like fulfilling to be able to just sit with someone and uncover whatever they need in that moment that I can offer. And I don't really always know what that is, but I'm really, really skilled at listening and like fine tuning what people are saying. And then I find that I am helpful and that it is beneficial because I get that feedback and I'm like, okay, cool. Next, keep going.
Yeah. And
I feel like the more I follow that intuitive divine nature, the more doors just keep opening for me.
Sure. Are you familiar with Studs Terkel?
What is it?
It's a guy. Studs. His name is Studsy. Studs Terkel. He passed away in 2008. There's a cool documentary on HBO Max, but he interviewed, I feel like this is probably like I don't know. He interviewed Chicagoans and just of all backgrounds and of all trades, and just to figure out like why do they do what they do, kind of like what the podcast is, but like and kind of like what you're doing now, like when you're meeting people. And is there a percentage or a ratio you think about, because you're also a life coach, so like between a breakdown between salon owners, entrepreneurs to people in general, or are you just open to anyone?
I would say I'm mostly open to anyone, but what naturally has been occurring is families with businesses, like families with small businesses. That's been kind of funny because it was like individuals. It was primarily female before, which is great. But I also like the diversity of adding in male energies and working with us. We had a conversation about that. I feel very comfortable, talking to males, very comfortable. I grew up with 3 brothers and a lot of dudes in my family and my atmosphere. So I've loved how it's naturally shifted. And I also believe, like we said, divine intervention, callings, synchronicities aren't coincidences. I don't believe in that. And I believe the universe keeps sending me families for a reason, because it's something that I deeply desire. And that may be something that I wasn't willing to admit to myself before. And now I have to, because all these damn little angels keep coming into my life, these little cool people, to remind me. And I feel like kids are the truth. Kids, old people, and animals. They have no filter.
That's it. That's what it is. Right.
They're the truth. They don't care what you achieve. They could care less how many salons I have. They want to know, are you going to play this game with me? Are you going to bounce on this trampoline with me and laugh? That's all they care about. And it's so beautiful because they can like just get you down to like, what's the truth? What's the truth for you now? So it has been a lot of families with small businesses. And I'm almost like, this is what I'm seeing. I'm almost like a family nanny. Right? For people with businesses. Okay, I'm very good at helping you plug holes and solve problems in your business that are usually leading to problems in your life, because they all go together. And then I'm also very good at integrating with families. I don't know, I think we talked about this last time on the podcast, but when I was younger, when we were hotel hopping, there would be a lot of times where I would stay with friends or stay with their families to get a break from the hotel life. And I was able to do that. I should say motel life because it's different than a hotel. Thank you so much. Period. But I would go integrate with families. And one of the things that I learned was just really how to like move in the family without causing too much, making too many waves. Now what's so beautiful, full circle 20 years later, is like people are like, please come stay with me and my family and please give us whatever you can offer us. So it almost feels like all of that, all of this COVID, all of the business experience, all of the life experience has come full circle into this body of work that may not make sense to everyone, but for the people it makes sense for, it fucking makes sense.
I mean, that's super niche.
Yeah, definitely. They're like, you ever see, what was that show? Was it like The Nanny? It wasn't The Nanny. It was like the woman, I think she was British and she went into people's homes with their kids.
Yeah, I'm imagining like an updo with red lipstick and she had like a high-pitched voice too. I can't think of it, but I have
you can see what I'm talking about.
In my head, yeah.
But it's so interesting because when people come to me with a business problem, I'm like, sure, that's the problem. When you really drill down, it's so much more in how you're managing yourself and how you're managing the stresses of your business and not making the stresses of your business become who you are. Those are separate.
That's so very easy to do.
Yeah.
Because you take your business home and you're constantly thinking about it.
And then if you do that all the time for years at a time and you don't cultivate a full, robust personal life, then when you're in a pandemic for 90 days locked in your home with mushrooms and edibles,
no life.
You're like, well, that did not go the way I planned. So you can reevaluate and say, maybe there's a better way.
Okay.
And that's what I did.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Keeping it real, Victor.
Wow. So what, within the next couple of years, what do you think is going to happen? Do you have a goal? Do you have a vision?
One thing I always have is a vision. In the next few years, I'm working towards finding where I want to settle roots next. Okay. I feel like the chapter in Chicago of me living here full time is over, which is fine. It's beautiful. I love this hybrid of being able to pop in for 2 weeks and pop out and be in nature. I think it's the most perfect balance for me now. I think over time I'll settle somewhere else. I do want to work on a retreat space and have a space where people can come to me in the future. It's always been my dream to own a home. And I do believe that I thought for many years that it wasn't a possibility for me based on old conditioning, life experiences. So I built my first tiny home, my van.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I have a home now and you can't take that away. Eventually I'd like a home where people can come and I can do retreats on my property. I always say, like, people are like, what are you going to be doing the next few years? I was like, I'm going to be in the forest, writing books, raising tiny Robin Hoods. And they're like, okay. And that's what I see for myself. I see writing books, being able to, offer podcasts or any of my information, digitally, and hopefully raising a family, hopefully having a family. Yeah.
I know. I met recently, probably last year, met a couple from California. They just had a 1-year-old. They also have a little pup, but they are both creatives. I guess one of them is more in the video photo world, and the other one has left. She was like an OR nurse and doing like nurse coaching, life coaching type stuff. But they invested in an Airstream, and in exchange for his video services, he got a plot of land in Mexico.
Amazing.
And when you're not using the Airstream to travel in, they can Airbnb it. And I just I feel like you would do something like that. And the retreats are very much so in your wheelhouse. I'm sure you got a lot of inspo from visiting Nick recently.
Yep. That's my spirit animal right there. The retreats and being able to, I think it's so impactful. I noticed when I was with my cousin when we were living together, you adapt to the energy around you. Yeah. So if you have the right positive, good energy around you, you'll elevate. And a lot of times I find in retreats, what's so powerful is you're in it. So if it's 3 or 4 days, you're surrounded by it and you can't help but change if you're open to it. You can't help but grow and like unlock new layers of yourself. So I think there's something very powerful to that. I think Tony Robbins' events aren't attracting 20,000 people a weekend for no reason. you do surround yourself and you get a lot of information, and it's powerful in those settings. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah.
And figuring out where that's going to be. I know I told you this before. I'm going to intuitively pull up to a town. I know myself because this has happened like 3 to 4 times when I've moved, where I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be here next. Cool. It's just the way my brain works with the van. Oh, we're supposed to live in a van. Okay, lady, that's great. Like, even when I think it's weird, if I feel like it's meant to be, I do it. So I felt that way when I moved to Chicago. I'd only been here on vacation for 4 days before.
It's funny that you're calling it a vacation.
No, that's how I moved here. I'd come here on vacation for 4 days, so I'd experienced it for like 4 days with.
Oh, this is like very back in the day.
Yeah, this is like 15 years ago. And when the idea came to move, my idea came to move to Chicago based on something traumatic. I had a coach, a dance coach, that I was really close with. She passed away during labor, having her baby. Was like perfectly in shape, all the things, and I was like, what? I didn't even know that could happen. I'm like, that can happen. This is insane. Life is short. I cannot like live in any kind of environment that I don't feel like is what's next for me.
Yeah.
I was working at an amazing spa. I was making way too much money, but I knew intuitively, I'm like, if I stay here, I'm going to get sucked in by this money. I'm going to get used to having this car. I'm going to just get sucked in, and I feel like there's something more. So I moved here. And I only spent like 3 days here. I was like, yeah, it's going to work out great. I did the same thing. I went to Miami once. This is before that move. I went to Miami once for a weekend. I was like, oh my God, I should move here. And I moved there in 2 months. I did the same thing with Chicago. So I know I'm going to find somewhere.
Imagine if you're still dancing, like professionally.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, also another driver for traveling is being able to attend dance events. And like, I have dancer friends. I used to be a pro dancer. So I have dancer friends all over the country that I'm like dying to see. So I set up these little pop-ups to go dance with all these different community of dancers. Yeah. That's one thing that's been on my bucket list to return to, is like something that doesn't make you money. It's just something you love to do for the love of doing it and the feeling of experiencing it. So I plan to dance my pants off this year.
You know, what connects both of us, or like as far as value-wise, it's like this sense of community. And you know, retirement for me would look like buying property in Hawaii and just being an Airbnb and showing people the love of the land. I remember I stayed in Thailand for a few days, and the owner of the Airbnb was also a chef at the restaurant, and the level of hospitality was just above and beyond, to the point where if you need a ride somewhere, I'm happy to take you. You should come to my restaurant. Well, you know, I'll get you dinner and stuff like that. And I want to you want to pay that forward, or you want to cultivate that. Yeah. So whether it's like the podcast, of maybe one day doing live podcasts with an audience, or photography and hosting photography sessions and walk through the city, you can do that as an Airbnb experience actually these days, right?
Those are really cool.
My friend hired a photographer as an Airbnb experience in New York City. So they went on the subway and just like took pictures around the subway and stuff. Yep. And so, you know, so many like ideas are definitely brewing, but I think for most people, retirement looks like doing nothing, but retirement is like doing what you want to do on your own terms when, you know? So, if that's a retreat, and that's the thing with retreats, is like or as a coach and me as a teacher, is like, there's that saying of like, you teach when you don't do. Yep. And you're very much so still learning a lot on a daily basis. Yeah. But I definitely feel that that absence, because I'm not active in emergency medicine anymore. So I'm trying to get back in it. I mean, I still have I have the frame for flight medicine, so being a flight paramedic and just transporting people across country, and like it looks like you can either choose helicopter or private jet. Ooh. And they fit stretchers and really sick patients, and you're transporting, you know, to and from facilities. So that's my one outlet back in, because I have no goals of running into burning buildings, so I don't want to be a fireman. Nope. I stick to the medicine side. But you and we both, my last post on my photography page is like, I feel like a daily dabbler. Meaning like I have no niche. I shared like how I'm not a wedding photographer, I'm not a boudoir photographer, I'm not, you know, a branding photographer or headshot. I feel like I do
a lot of different things,
like whatever I want to do, and there's pros and cons to that. I'm just getting sidetracked right now. But like as a coach, as a teacher, it's still very important to be within it.
Stay curious.
Yeah, right.
To stay curious about what's next and what you can also learn, because whatever we're learning, we're serving and offering that to people. If I hadn't had that lengthy stay in Florida, I wouldn't have learned all the things that I had learned. Mm. And I just think that gives me like a more robust palette per se to share with people. Is like, I have a lot of different experiences to offer now.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's something amazing to that.
Do you want to stay within the States, or you want to, because
okay,
Bali, Mexico?
I did just
Canada.
Mm-mm.
No, why not? So it's just a place to visit?
Canada after 2020. I have so many friends in Canada from the spray tanning world.
Okay.
Tons. Just to see what they went through and how oppressive that was for them.
More restrictive.
Yeah, it's actually funny. So when I took a trip, I had always wanted to go leaf peeping, where you watch the fall colors change with leaves.
Oh, I faintly...
It's a thing.
Yeah.
So I took my cousin on my first van trip from Florida to Vermont.
Oh,
Vermont to Chicago. And you see all those leaves in New England. Well, there's this one point where you're leaving Vermont and you have to go through New York. But it's very easy to mess up and go through Canada. And Canada was being so gangster at the time. I was like terrified. So we went like 2 hours out of where I am. Like, I don't want to go by Canada. And I used to think Canada was so warm and friendly.
Gangster in what way? Like they wouldn't let you in?
No, I was afraid I was going to get in and they were going to like snatch me. I don't know. It's not a rational fear. It's not rational. I'm not saying it makes sense. But in my mind, like any areas of extremity, anything where I felt like it was very extreme, I didn't want to be a part of. And I'm so glad that this is coming up, because it's kind of been a lesson peppered through the last 2 years. Even people, places, things. If I felt like they were in an extreme place and I couldn't be helpful, or I would get carried into that, like I had to let that go, because it's like, I don't want to re-experience that. I've already lived in crazy extremes for many years. I'm not doing that again. And I think that that's what the pandemic reminded me of. You have a choice. It may not be an easy one. It may not be the most simple. It was not simple to give away all my things, find places to live all the time, move around the way that I have, and, kind of reestablish myself. But it was what absolutely felt to be the most important thing for me to do.
Sure.
So I refuse to live in extreme environments that I don't feel like are healthy for me. And that looks different for everybody based on their life. That's what's been so polarizing about this experience culturally.
Are people on both ends of the extremes unwilling to listen? Are they not as open-minded?
I feel like they can be. Whatever team or side. I'm not on any team or side, so it works out fine for me. I'm like, nope, I'm on the team truth, whatever that means for me.
Sure.
Whatever feels right and truthful to me, I trust it. And when I don't trust it, I challenge it. Right? And I feel like a lot of people aren't willing to challenge their own beliefs and say, well, I have thought this way my whole life, but could I think a different way?
Yeah.
Could this be something else other than what I'm seeing? Am I seeing this through the lens of my own trauma and life experience? There's a lot of come to Jesus moments when you ask yourself those questions regularly.
Even in a big metropolitan area, I think a lot of people are still living in a bubble.
Yeah, I almost believe that we're under a spell in a lot of ways. I do believe that. Culturally, spiritually, I do believe that.
So how does one break the spell?
Turn off the TV. Just like that. Literally, turn off the TV.
Because people choose to listen to certain things and watch certain things, even if it's not their TV, even if it's their social media feeds.
Oh, just as bad.
It's a feedback loop.
Yes. So it's going to affirm what you think or what you don't think. And it's almost like turn off all that noise and go and be in the world and see what you think then. See who you meet. So my middle brother, who is just a true blue kind of dude, he gave me this analogy, and it's it's just straight up. He's like, Jen, the world's trying to, and he's smoking a cigarette. He kind of looks like the Marlboro Man. He's got a big ass beard. He's just a tried and true dude, right? And he's like, Jen, the world's going to try to tell us that we're all different and we all hate each other. He's like, you know why I know that's not true? I was like, please tell me. He's like, so when I take my ass to 7-Eleven at 6 in the morning, all the getter-doners are out there like me. We're all holding the door for each other to go in and take a shit. I'm like, wow. But it's not untrue. It's not. It's real. It's so real.
Yeah.
He's like, we're doing that. Somebody's getting their Cinnabons. They're getting their coffee. They're getting their gas. He's like, and we're all in this together. And he's like, and at the end of the day, it's all up to God. So fuck them. And I was like, honestly, that's the best way I've ever heard it said before. It's so genuine and like salt of the earth. I do, anywhere I go, I meet wonderful people for the most part. Like when the riots and the pandemic and the kids screaming out of the car and the dudes come, I was like, I don't feel like this is real, actually. I don't think that this is my people that I've been living around all the way.
What do you think caused those people to behave that way?
Ooh, you don't want to open that box, Victor.
I'm curious. I'm kind of curious to set someone off like that, to berate someone just on the street for no reason.
That is a box we might not be able to open today. I'll get a lot of hate for that. Come at me in the DMs. I believe that intuitively I felt like a lot of that wasn't people that were living in Chicago. I do. That kid and that experience with that mom, I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. The mom was like a total zombie, totally not present to her little child, 9 or 10. Are you okay? That is just so upsetting to even be that upset at a stranger. It's like,
was there anyone else around you?
No. I was looking around like, are they talking to me?
Oh my goodness.
It was so bizarre. And even the men, when I would walk down the street, you know, the Gold Coast was different for a while. They got brutalized with vandalism and looting. And there was just a different crowd there. It was almost like people partying in the middle of a day on a Sunday. That wasn't normal for the Gold Coast. Like people are brunching and walking their dogs and stuff and shopping at Gucci or whatever. So those people, I almost think everyone's, if you think about a pressure cooker, right? Everyone's like, pressure. Some people have an inundation of all of this money quickly all of a sudden, but maybe not the financial literacy of how to utilize it as a tool. So they're making decisions. There's people trapped in their house and they don't have a release. They don't have any of their typical outlets. They don't have any of their regular routine. Routine's important.
Yeah.
So
and when that, you know, that
when that
rug
gets wiped
just like
away,
slipped under you. Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost like a free-for-all.
Yeah.
It was almost like a free-for-all. I'm like, what are we doing? What is a circus? What is happening?
Maybe they feel like they have nothing to lose anymore.
I think so. I mean, I know I didn't. You know, it didn't cause me to make those decisions. It caused me to like give away all my shit and move in a van. But, you know, everybody has a different lens and place that they're at. So I think some people are like, what do I have to lose? And they responded one way. And some people are like, what do I have to lose? And they responded another way.
Yeah.
You know, and it's based on, I saw a lot of people that have pulled themselves up out of like negative situations regress because they no longer had their work or their support system.
Sure.
A lot of people that were with me, the work environment was the support system. The outside family environment wasn't the support system. And so when they had to go back to the old way, you make choices, you know, and I feel like the world split into the old world and the new world. And there's a lot of people still, whoa, play a sign. There's a lot of people still prescribing to that old mentality, hustle till you die, sleep when you're dead. I mean, yeah, you'll sleep when you're dead because you're dead. But anyway, and then there's a whole new wave of people that are like, God, there's more. There's more than money. There's more than achievement. There's more than this validation. There's more than building an empire. There's just more. And, you know, people chose their own adventure.
A few people
there.
tried building empires from those COVID tests.
Blessings.
And they got in trouble.
Really?
Because they weren't submitting their COVID tests legitimately. So people that would take these tests would get false positives or wouldn't even hear back. They wouldn't even get a result. And then people discovered that the owners of these COVID test centers were buying luxury cars at auctions, and people in the comments would be like, oil money? And they're like, COVID money.
Yeah. That was what was really hard about and this goes back to the media and kind of what they portray. There was all of this false hope of like, we're going to give all these small business owners these PPP loans and all this money. And like, we were just living large. I'm like, what do you mean? It was for 2 months. But if your business changes for a year and a half, that 2 months is so helpful. Thank you. It's not that I'm not grateful, but I also feel like you stole my money. So like, let's talk about that another day. But people had this, oh, you're getting the PPP, you're fine. I was like, if one more person tells me that I'm going to be fine from this fucking PPP money, I'm going to freak out.
Yeah.
Because it was just portrayed in one way, and people really only...
They don't get it.
They listen to headlines for anything.
Insurance, when windows break or...
They'll break the windows. I remember when Nick's from High Vibe, when their place got looted.
Yeah.
It was so sad to see, and we were DMing, and it's like 1 a.m. I still have a picture of it. It makes me feel so upset to this day because it's him and his wife, and now they just had a second baby. They're a family-owned business. If you are mad at the government for their injustice, burn down City Hall. You know what I'm saying? It does not make sense to me.
No, people aren't thinking. It's not targeted.
Yeah, but it felt like it was.
Oh, for sure.
It totally felt like it was. Every time we had to put those boards up, which you had to be prepared because then there was a shortage of that. Like, you have to be ready. That's just not a way to live. And why would you torture your neighbor who's done the same thing you're wanting to do? They built a life for themselves. They worked their ass off. I didn't feel like it was fair for us to be targeted to get our stuff broken into, and we just had to accept it. That's how it was. I'm like, this is not right in any way, shape, or form. And if you went against that narrative, then you're a racist. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
How does that have anything to do with that?
Yeah.
I would have people message me, and I was very diplomatic about sharing my views because I respect everyone, and everyone I know has different views. So I don't like to be polarizing, but I also don't like to be suffocated where I feel like I can't say what I think. And when that happened to them, and I watched them feel so helpless, because remember, they raised all the bridges and all those people were stuck there in that spot.
Yes, yeah.
And for people to just go in and trash all their stuff, and then they had to be boarded up like that for weeks because the window companies were over inundated. You're not going to check from insurance for months. Let me debunk that myth. Fact check whoever does that. And I posted about this, and I'm like, this breaks my heart. And people would DM me, you care about people over property, or property over people. I'm like,
too simple.
That is too simple of a way to think about it. That's those people's property. They worked their ass off to build this. This is their livelihood. Yeah. Well, money shouldn't be the factor. You say that until your way of making money is taken from you.
Yeah.
You don't see what you don't see. And it was being just like totally laser focused on this one avenue when it was just so diverse of an experience. And I had people who messaged me, white people, you're just whitewashed. You don't understand the experience of a brown person. I'm like, okay. I mean, I have an incarcerated parent. I've been homeless. I would think that I do, and I am. If you want to see me as whitewashed, I actually had never heard that term before. I'm like, that's fine. I just think it's a weird thing for you as a white person to say to me. And I just think it's weird. I wouldn't come to you and be like, you know what? You're just too white to understand. Like, it's just not a kind thing to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or you're a white passing Hispanic. I was like, what the hell does that mean?
A white passing?
White passing, that means that, like, you off the street. This is what I learned in 2020.
I wouldn't have assumed
You wouldn't have assumed I'm Hispanic. Sure. I was like, so you're saying I'm not brown enough for you right now?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Would you say that to this person? Why do you feel like you have what's the word I'm looking for?
The audacity or?
Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, are y'all for real? Like, I can't even deal with this right now. And it was people who, like, their lives weren't affected the way that ours were. So the audacity that some people have had to say their views, and now the way things have come full circle, I'm like, where y'all at? You guys had so much to say. Come with it. And they don't have anything to say. It's very fascinating. And it was very upsetting. I lost a lot of people in my life where I was like, I'm not even being vocal about what I think, but it's just that you feel that you can say whatever you want to say
without
in the
any
name of your righteousness.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you.
I mean, there's atrocities happening in brown and black neighborhoods all the time, and like these riots are nowhere to be found. Yeah, so it's very interesting, and there's I don't see any logic in any of the riots.
There has been so many times, Victor, that I have been angry, right, in life, feeling like when I went to testify against my mother, which was a huge deal as like a barely 18-year-old kid to have the courage to do that. It was this close, I did it in like a judge's chambers or whatever. And I was like, man, I'm like making a decision because I feel like it's the right thing that's going to affect this person, although they made their decisions, whatever. And then after I did that, it came to be the detective that like convinced me and coached me and was like, this is the right thing to do. You can do this, and we have this case, and it's going to be solid. Because I really did feel like prison was the safest place for her, at least for a while, based on like how she moved through the world. And then the detective slept with the other witness on the other side, so half of the sentence got reduced. And I'm like,
shit.
How dare you put me in this position to step up and do what I feel like is the right thing, and you don't keep that same promise to yourself when you could have sex with anybody else in the world. Do you know what I'm saying? That's like part of the reason where I lost faith in authority figures. I'm like, they're just people. Anyone can be flawed. Right. Anyone can be bought. Anyone can be convinced and swayed. And it's up to us and our moral fiber to make, decisions that feel right to us. So there is, a part of you that empathizes with that movement, with the BLM movement of like cops have too much power or authority in some sense, or they're not maybe not that, but like there are bad cops, but there's bad people all over the place. There's bad people everywhere. And to hold the police system just to a degree where you're going to have perfection, I think is unrealistic. You can't have perfection in anything where you're not going to have people slip through the cracks who think a certain way. And my thoughts on the BLM movement, I will keep to myself because they probably won't be popular. Anything that I feel like balloons out of the system that it just didn't feel genuine to me. It didn't feel genuine to me. Do I believe in the fact that Black Lives Matter and every life matter? Yes, I do.
Yeah.
But, now look at what we have with what we've done to demoralizing police who work in fight or flight every day of their life.
Oh, yeah, I know.
That is like a completely bananas way to have a job if you think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their nervous system, they
got families to go home to.
Holy crap, they do. Everybody does. So I felt like the way the media took that and manipulated it, I couldn't get behind that.
Sure.
I'm like, there's just too much. There's too much money here. And now there's a lot coming out on how they use that money for $1 Million Mansions and all that. I'm like, nah.
It's an interesting way to spend that money.
It's an interesting way to spend that money.
And then I think they're circumventing it by saying like it's a place to host retreats.
And they're saying that if you question it, which we should be able to question everything. If you question it, then you're inflicting trauma on them. I'm like, no, if that were me, they'd question my ass. What would be the difference?
Yeah, that's interesting.
I think there's just a lot of bait and switching happening. There's a lot of foolery. There's a lot of Wizard of Oz happening. So it's hard to speak clearly on any of it because I just feel like it's a lot of smoke and mirrors across the board. All the movements, all the things. If you look, every day we have a new movement that we have to care about and get outraged by. No, thank you. I'm not going to do that because you know what you're going to do? You're going to switch the channel. COVID's over. Cool. We're doing this now. This war and this war. And you're just going to try to keep me off balance because you are siphoning my energy, actually. You're feeding off my energy and I won't allow it.
I think it's important to be aware. But then to a certain extent, at what point do you stop living your life?
Right. And that's like a decision that we all have to make, and unfortunately I feel like a lot of people are so off balance based on what happened because it's an insane thing that we went through in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
It's very unsettling. All the uncertainty, like humans need a certain level of certainty to function properly. With all of that, I feel like that's just kept so many people, and myself included at times, just like not knowing what's next. Jesus, Lord, what's going to happen now? What do I need to care about now? If I don't say this right, you're going to hate me. If I don't say this right, you're canceling me. So honestly, I'd rather just do my own thing and stay out of it. Because for the most part, I just don't trust the sources of a lot of what's happening.
Maybe people don't have enough going on in their own life. I don't know.
They don't have enough to focus on. Think about it. A lot of people, the biggest shift that they made in COVID was they couldn't go to brunch on Sunday and pound beers and watch football. They couldn't, they weren't in the office getting that socialization, which I have empathy for sure. Is just a different state of being when you're faced with that and you're faced with losing everything that you've built in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And in that way, money does matter. Everybody needs a certain amount of money to live.
Yeah.
And you've invested all this time and energy in making it this one way. And then everybody's like, oh, just pivot your business. And I'm like, I wish it were that simple to just go ahead and pivot. Wouldn't we have done that before? Just a lot of pivoting to make new money. But that's what I'm saying. The spells, the words that's being used, the headlines that are being used. There's so much trickery that happens in the name of, I think, a lot of money and power that I don't resonate with. I don't resonate with celebrity. I'm not impressed. I didn't hear a single celebrity talk about how to help small business, but J-Lo sure did come out with a new perfume. I hope it's selling. Do you know what I'm saying? I got no love for you. But then when we would have these other movements, those people mattered. Well, why don't we matter? So I'm still waiting on an email about that. Mrs. Lopez. I'm still waiting. It's crazy because when you talk about the shifts in values and cultural shifts, we have been trained to idolize these people. They're ordinary people.
Yeah.
And we're trained to idolize them and put them on this pedestal. And when I saw how all of them moved for the last 2 years, I was like, y'all are done for me. Because I know that my industry has supported your work and your newest haircut style and haircut trend and the bag that you're selling and whatever you're selling next. But I didn't hear a peep. For real. Tell me if I'm wrong. I didn't hear anyone. I'm still waiting. I didn't hear anyone talk about that. I didn't hear, except for Dave from Barstool. God bless Dave.
Yeah.
Which came out with
Dave
the Barstool
Portnoy.
Stun, the Barstool Fund. That was the only person.
For not just for any business,
All
not
this,
just pizza places.
I'm telling you, I cried like a baby when that first started happening because the genuine responses from the people who were, however they won that or whatever, or however they got picked, I was like, oh my God, they needed that so bad.
A few places in Chicago got them.
People, you see grown men cry, like your dad's age crying, and they weren't taught to cry, that generation. That was a beautiful thing. That's the only celebrity per se that I saw even giving us a voice. And it's like we were being, I feel like, tortured in a way. Open, close, restriction, this, that. Lori Lightfoot, I remember her going out to get a haircut and getting caught.
Yeah.
But then telling us we were going to lose our license. We will shut you down if I find you working under the table. What were we supposed to do? But what works for you is okay. Mm-hmm. So the hypocrisy of all that, and I'm not even a political person. I'm sure you know this. I'm like, I just couldn't unsee that. So I felt like my relationship with Chicago was like a bad breakup.
Gotcha.
I felt like you came in and like caused chaos in my world and then just left me to clean everything up. And then you're supposed to tell me COVID's over now because we're in this other war and that's what I'm supposed to care about. But then what happened to all that? I'm not going to forget that. Dang. I'm not forgetting. I will not be forgetting that.
Oh, wow. You think there's a chance to be forgiven?
Chicago? With the current leadership, and I use that word very lightly. No, not right now.
Yeah.
Not right now.
Where do you think you'll settle then? If you have any, like a top 5 or...
I know it's going to be the mountains. I feel like that's the next place for me. I've never lived in them.
Okay.
I've experienced them. I used to go camping every year as a kid in the Smokies. And I felt this like strange is not a good word, but this like really beautiful connection with mountains. When I go, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like everything is so clear. Mm-hmm. So I know it's going to be in the mountains somewhere. I just don't know where. And to be honest, I have been trying to learn how different states operate, because I learned that I was like, okay, every state's different. That's how this works. Yeah. I didn't know.
Right.
That's not in my wheelhouse of anything that I would know. So I would pay attention, because I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm going to get shut down or I'm going to get clamped on business-wise.
Yeah, so I guess, like, what other criteria are you looking for? Is it a community that you've kind of established you with already in that area, or...
No, I think it's going to be intuitively guided by feeling. Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to know, because I have, like I said before, in every instance where I've moved, I've gone somewhere and it's just felt right. And it's not been wrong. Is
there a place on your list that you haven't visited yet that you want to visit?
Oh my gosh, I want to visit Utah, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, the hiking, because I love hiking.
Yeah, Columbia River Gorge is great. Yeah.
all of that I need to experience to see. I also don't want to do brutal winter. So I'm not so fascinated with 8 months of winter.
Yeah.
I need like sunshine and...
Well, you're mobile.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing. But when I do go to establish roots in a home, it'll be somewhere. I don't want a full time.
I gotta send you this Airbnb. Well, it was like a couple miles of large rock, like off-roading, but it's an old mining town in Colorado, surrounded by mountains. And the guy that runs it, you can find on Airbnb. The guy that runs it only operates it in the summer. Otherwise, there's too much snow to even get through.
Yeah.
And then he spends his winter in Hawaii, so it's just like back and forth.
Isn't that what's so interesting? Like, I would have never thought of creating this kind of dynamic that I have going right now with like being flexible and mobile living. But I'm so glad I get to go and experience people, which is my most favorite thing, to travel and experience new things and see more of the world. So for that, I'm so grateful. I don't think I would have ever done it.
What are your thoughts on Mexico?
Mexico's?
I've never been.
Really?
Yeah.
I've only been to like Cancun and Riviera Maya, so I really only have like a limited experience with it.
But I can't imagine the plot of land, as being too costly compared to some places in the States.
Do you know where I looked at? This is what I was going to say earlier when you were asking me if I looked anywhere international. I was on Instagram and I saw this thing pop up about getting a visa in Portugal. And like how to get your visa in Portugal. I was like, hold on. I've heard amazing things about Portugal and the people there. And they're literally like, this is pre-COVID, but that you would literally meet people off the street and they're welcoming you in their home to have dinner. And so I looked into that. I don't know what the process is, but I asked them. I'm in like a queue to learn more about getting my visa to Portugal. But I really am very open to whatever's going to come my way next. I'm very open and ready.
Going off of how much you rely on intuition, you're very open to plant medicine and psychics. How long have you been engaged in that stuff, and have they come to fruition? Have they manifested like after you've been told these things or shared these visions?
Sure. I would say in regard to, I've had a long time tarot reader. Her name's Totem Rach on Instagram, probably for over 10 years, that I would visit like every few years. And then the last few years, it was more and more, and we established more of a friendship. But so much that she's been able to channel has been true for me. There's another, have you ever had those aura readings?
You showed me yours, the colors, and you showed me yours before you left for the first trip down, I think, to Florida.
Amazing. Revealing Soul in Chicago.
That's Instagram? Revealing Soul.
Revealing Soul. Cindy, she's amazing. And what she's been able to like pull out of a session, you'll take a picture with this aura camera, and then you have all these colors. And she basically explains what each color means particularly to you, and then can channel loved ones, and that has been incredible. Also, losing loved ones, especially there's been 2 lately. I lost a best friend. I think I've talked about this before, like 10 years ago. That was the first time I really started to learn about connecting to the other side. I just never had experience like that. I'd lost grandparents and things like that. But I think because this one was so young and so early and so, I just never thought that could happen. I was so naive to that it was like a life-defining moment. I feel so connected to him still on the other side that it's like I can't not believe for myself.
Yeah.
I'm just like...
Yeah, you see him and around you, yeah.
All the time, or I'll get messages. I actually got to go see his family on one of my last road trips. So I was coming from Phoenix to Florida for Ziggy's surgery. And once I noticed on my route, I've learned with the van to be flexible, to not like have these rigid routes, because things happen and things change and you have to be... I think it's really cool kind of side effect. But once I realized, I was like, oh my God, I'm going right through their new town that they moved in. I should text them. So I text them. I'm like, hey, I'm coming through your town. I'd love to like stop by for a day. They're like, please. And I've always been able to, since he passed, because it's not my child. I think it's different if you lose a child. I can't even imagine how devastating that is. I can't even think about that. But I think at times it was hard for them to access him because it's so painful. And for me, I just started getting signs and I'm like, I don't know what this means, but it is helping me. So I'm just going to stay open to it. And I kind of trained myself, just stay open to it. So the morning I'm in New Orleans, in the suburbs of New Orleans, my first driveway surf in a gated waterfront community, beautiful view. I'm like, oh my God, van life. I thought it was so cool. I did it. And I was staying with another spray tanner friend that I had met for a while on their property, and they had a pool house, and she said, do you want to take a shower in our pool house? I'm like, yeah, that would be great. Just start my day fresh. And I was getting ready to go see Mike's family. They're like an hour away. So I take a shower, and afterwards she's like, we have all these animals out here. Do you want to meet one of the animals? I'm like, yeah. Everyone makes fun of me. I'm like Snow White, like kids and animals like come to me. I'm like, yes, please. So she had bunnies and cats and all these animals. This cat, a white, like a Persian, I think, cat, walks up to me, 11 years old. So I just noted the number and sits down and just starts staring at me. And she's like, oh my God, that's Sebastian. He's old. Sebastian used to be when we would go to the clubs when we were young kids. You're like 18, you go to the club. We all had code names in case we met somebody and we kind of liked them, but we weren't sure. We didn't give him a real name, right?
Wow.
That was Mike's code name.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, good morning. You're here. Cool. So I make my journey. I note that. And I'm like, that's hilarious. He's like letting me know you're on the right path. So I drive to meet his family. His mom's at work and she's like, just come over here when you're ready. So I come in, I open the door and she's like, I'll be right with you. Not knowing it's me. And she comes around the corner and she's like, oh, it's you. And we instantly can like feel the energy of him in the room. We're sitting down talking. 15 minutes into talking, a song comes on. When we were kids, we used to dance to Time of My Life from Dirty Dancing. We used to do the dance in the living room. And they at times lived in like these tiny apartments, and there was, you know, a lot of the family lived there, and it was the most beautiful experience because they were so salt of the earth, genuine, beautiful people that maybe outwardly it didn't seem like they had all the bells and whistles, but they had so much fucking love that none of that mattered. And it was a gift to be around that. And at his funeral, I didn't know this. So the funeral ends and they're like, okay, everyone, you can leave. His mom gets up and walks over to me and she says, we're dancing out of this fucking place. And they played that song and I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. So we do. And that was just crazy. And there was years where I could never hear the song and not be moved to tears. We're sitting there and the song comes on and we both look at each other and we're like,
wow,
yeah, this happening. So we ended up getting to spend time together for like a whole day. I stayed the night and his sister was there and his mom was there. And, you know, when I left, we all felt like grateful for the experience because we felt like he was there. Mm-hmm. That's what we all shared with each other. And it was beautiful. So I don't take those detours for granted. Mm-hmm. I don't take the timeline for granted. I don't take any time. I'm flexible. There's always because some kind of beautiful experience is coming from that.
Yeah.
So I just stay open to that. Isn't that insane? I'm like, holy moly, here we are. But my lessons with the divine have been, you know, my father was a pastor, but he never put it on us. Like you would never meet him and he would never start talking about God. Mm-hmm. It's just not his thing. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. He like, that's his job and he does it and he believes in it, but he's never trying to convert you over, which I always appreciated because I never want to be forcefully convinced to do anything. So I've been allowed, I think through life to be able to come to terms with what that meant for me.
Sure.
And how I wanted to utilize it. And it's just been a gift. You know, staying open to that. My grandmother that passed away November 2019, we weren't super close in life. We weren't not cool. There was just like an energetic wall there, not personal to me because I got to spend time with other family members and talk through a lot of that. It's just like people are the way they are based on their experiences, right?
Sure.
And whatever version you get of them at the time has a lot of factors to be factored in. After she passed, the day before we shut down, we have a session with Cindy in the salon about energy clearing, the revealing soul. And she's like, can I read the energy of the room? I'm like, yeah, okay. And she's like, can I do it live with you there? I'm like, sure. And she's like, your grandmother's here. And she had just passed away 3-4 months before. And I was like, okay, does she have anything to say? Like, how does this work? And she's like, she wants you to know she's sorry that you found out the way that you did and that you found out through written word because someone just texted me that she passed away. I was like, oh, wow. She had all these beautiful things to say. Now in the afterlife, I found more instances and experiences of my grandmother than I ever did when she was alive. Like My whole family called her Ladybug.
Yeah.
They all got tattoos of Ladybug, this and that. I have seen more freaking ladybugs in my life than ever before. When I was at Nick's, 7, 8 ladybugs a day were showing up. And I was like, guys, is this normal?
And it's not because it's fresh in your head.
No, I don't think so. I asked them, I said, have you been seeing these before? And they're like, nope. I was like, incredible. I was driving down to Miami a couple months ago to see some friends, and there was a ladybug in my car the whole way, and I didn't know it. And then I get to a stoplight right there, and boom, there she goes in my face. I was like, well, hey, dude, what do you want to tell me? So for me, it's like, if I can stay open to any signs that I'm receiving, whether I really know how to decode them or not, I feel like I get a lot of valuable information.
Is there such a thing as too much of that? It's like, why not? Like, Cindy, can you move in with me? And can you just tell me my life?
Is such a thing as what? Too many signs?
Yeah. Is there, I mean, once you get these affirmations, it's like, I can't have enough. Like,
oh yeah.
Tell me.
Well, Tony Robbins, I think, calls it the reticular activating system,
Sure.
RAS, which I'm sure there's a lot of truth to that. Negative or positive, right? If you're looking for the negative in everything, you'll find it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking for the positive in everything, you'll find it.
Well, and not just that, but like going back to Cindy more often. Like, is there any part of you that's like, I need to know more, I want to know more?
For her, it almost kind of works where you like,
or it has to come to her.
It comes to her and she channels that out.
Yeah.
But from what I understand about learning from her is like, I'll go and I'll get this information. Some of it's stuff that has happened, will happen, you don't know. And so you kind of want to like let life play out for a while and see what you observe, from what I understand. And hopefully I'm articulating that correctly. But that was my experience. Is I don't want to keep going and getting different validation. I get what I get and then kind of see what opens up in the world.
Like, to a certain extent, you gotta like still live your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can't be looking for it, but it's funny when it happens because you're like, oh my God, here we are.
You're not looking for it, but you're open to it. Yeah.
There's a lot of people that aren't open to any of that. They think that signs are bularchy and made up. They think that anything kind of metaphysical isn't real because it's not as tangible as like math, right? You ask me anything about math and I'm like...
But it helps you make some sense of your circumstance, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's a whole, I've met a lot of people who at first will be like, oh, you're a preacher's daughter, or you believe in this, you believe in that. I'm like, sort of. I was always able to kind of use religion the way that I wanted. And I feel like I more connect to like a spiritual realm of believing that there's something.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I have to define it in a certain way, and I don't care how you define it. Does not bother me at all.
Okay.
I love for people to believe in something.
Sure.
But it doesn't have to be what I believe in.
No. At
all. And using that as kind of like a roadmap for myself has been helpful. Because, again, I can learn something from everything. I can go to a Catholic church with you and learn a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I can go to another kind of experience and learn a lot. I can go to plant medicine, which, in religious terms, like they would necessarily see that as a positive thing. But I've learned a lot from plant medicine. I've learned a lot in the past 2 years from psilocybin, magic mushrooms. Microdosing has been like game changer.
Really?
Game changer. And I think I was telling a friend and she's like, well, you're giving it a lot of, I don't know, what's the word, credit. And then I had to sit down and think about that. I'm like, well, is it the mushrooms or is it me? And then I'm like, it's all the work that I've been doing and then adding in this new tool that just kind of like threw me over a plateau.
Does it remove filters?
No, for me, it's not that. For me, it gives me, this is a perfect way that I can explain it. For me, it gives me a buffer of time between stimulus and response. So say you and me.
To sit with it.
Yeah. Say you and me are in a conversation and we don't see things eye to eye. And maybe something like that is very important to you. And for me, it's neither here nor there. It won't allow me to get activated emotionally where I'm reactive. I can just sit with it and say, well, what is this?
Yeah.
What does it mean? What should I get upset about this?
Yeah.
Or is this just us learning through life? And that's been beautiful to not be reactive and to be able to be present, like fully present, to see things with such clarity and like things do look like they're in Technicolor. And I've never been like a tripper. I've never tripped on mushrooms or anything. Like I just never did. But when you take them in small amounts, what it can do for your nervous system that I've learned is like, I think it's criminal that everybody doesn't have access to it.
Yeah, they're doing research in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
They're doing a lot of research, and as soon
And
as I
hopefully
think...
it creates a standard, and,
Yeah.
and more research can be done across the United States.
Do you know there's actually a facility here in Chicago? They have a bunch called Field Trip Health.
No.
That I learned about, where they do MDMA, ketamine, psilocybin guided experiences for people with anxiety or depression or anything like that, PTSD. I don't know how they get around it legally to do it.
Okay.
But it's like a medical clinic. Beautiful facility from what it looks like.
And that's what it takes, right? A proper setting with a guide that knows what they're doing to watch you while you're doing it. Because there can be bad trips, right? And that's how it should be studied. Otherwise, prior to that, who's going to admit to like doing illicit substances like at home, and how much truth is there? Because it's like, how much did you take? What did you take? Did you get it? What's your source? So it's like now there's like proper channels and standards, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm really excited and encouraged about that. Yeah, I feel like it can help a lot of people.
Yeah, people. I mean, medicine, like traditional pharmaceuticals, don't work for everyone.
They're not always the answer. I've gone through a lot with Ziggy and trying to figure out how to like shrink this tumor and shrink cancer cells, and the traditional medicine, like, he's just not a candidate for. He just can't physically handle it. Yeah. So we've had to like try a lot of different avenues, and it can be overwhelming for sure. Especially people in modern culture that I've found, we have been trained for so many years to trust doctors, trust the doctors. Doctors are just people, and I like to think of it this way, same as lawyers. They're practicing medicine. They're practicing law. They're practicing veterinary medicine. They're not gods. They're just human beings based on the knowledge that they have, which is a lot of times limiting. Especially when you talk about nutrition and the ways that can heal the body, and environmental stimuli, emotional regulation. That's just not in their wheelhouse. It's not a dig. Yeah. They're great people. They're trying really hard to do the right thing. But their toolkit, I think, needs to be revised across the board. Yeah. In all of those areas that I talked about, law, veterinarian, and human medicine. Absolutely. There's just so much more to learn. But we've placed all of this, right? This is what doesn't make sense to me. So much into that. But we won't trust a plant that grows from the fucking ground that God planted. Yeah. We won't trust it because it's been demonized, and we've been told, dare to keep kids off drugs. Let's keep them off the drugs we want them to, but it's okay to take that Ritalin, ADHD. Yeah. Don't even get me started.
A previous guest, he's an acupuncturist, one of the few acupuncturists at the VA. Awesome. And there was a patient who has been hiccuping since like November. No. Chronic hiccups. Annoying. And after 3 sessions with the acupuncturist, his name's Ryan, the hiccups went away. Really? And the traditional doctor just attributes it to coincidence because it didn't happen after the first session. But yeah, it's interesting. It's important to be open-minded, and to there's a space for everyone, I guess.
Yeah, there's a place for everything in its place, right?
Yeah. So before we leave, remind me to tell you about Marcia, who owns For Dog's Sake. Okay. Before we leave. But so to end, I guess, I want to talk about like narratives and how people like view their world. So like what's something that we can share as closing remarks to, and I have a feeling it's just to be open-minded, but like we all need a narrative because it gives us a sense of purpose, I think, right? To live our lives. But in your words, how important is it, and how can one go about cultivating their own narrative?
Well, I think that's a great question. I think that you would need to start with questioning your own narratives, right? We all have 2 versions speaking at one time, our ego mind and our conscious mind, right? And they're battling. And a lot of times we don't know which one is talking to us. But there's 2 versions of the world. Yeah. And really constantly saying, like, is thinking this way helping or hurting me? Is listening to that voice helping or hurting me? Because a lot of times it can just be like your fear talking or anxiety. I like to think of it as this. This is kind of the ethos that I have going for myself right now. The world is beautiful and I have time. Right? Whereas before, City Jen was like, everything has to happen now. Got to do it. No. A city life can make you insane. You're on top of each other. You're crunched. You're going fast. And there's so many options. Everything, you never know if you're missing out. The FOMO is real. All of it. the comparison game, all of it. Turning that all off and saying the world is still beautiful and I still have time.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm alive and I'm breathing, I have time to do everything I've ever wanted. So not falling into the trap of making hurried decisions or rushing into things that you're not necessarily sure of. Just kind of like taking my time. And it's thrown a lot of people off. They're like, well, we need you to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. You know, setting new boundaries of like, this is when I work and this is how I work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, you know, you have to retrain the people around you. So that's different. But going back to narratives, that's the one that I've been using.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah. And not feeling forced or rushed and not feeling like I have to do anything the way that anyone else is doing it. I have to do what makes sense for me. So one trap, and I might leave you with this, maybe it's helpful. One trap that I could easily fall into is watching peers. You know, this is the moment where they're making big moves and, you know, elevating and doing different things. And like, oh man, am I missing the boat? No, your boat already sailed past that. You've already been through those experiences because you're at a different place. So it's like we get caught in comparison.
Sure.
But you don't know where their starting line was. People don't know where mine was. So it's like, do I want to be doing my next big build up? No, I've already done it like 7 times. I'm good. I already got that. There's something different for me. And not falling trap into like my success needs to look like anyone else's success. Has to look exactly like mine. Exactly what it means for me.
Yeah.
Do you have one?
Do I have
A narrative or an ethos that you're living by now?
Man, I mean, I told you how, like, just anytime someone dies very suddenly, especially around you, that you somewhat kind of were close to or should have been closer to, just is a wake-up call or a reality check to check in with other people and how fragile life can be. And that kind of contrasts to... Well, it compares and so it's like you slow down, but like life can be taken away from you at any moment, right? So you want to do all these things and accomplish all these things, but it's important to, I guess, go at your own pace. There's so much to do, so little. It feels like so little time at times.
There's so much to be said for pacing yourself, right?
Yeah.
I remember when we talked about this when I was in Florida. I was still on city pace. And the Florida people are on island time. They're like, what's wrong with this lady? Like, chill out, girl. And it was a beautiful reset of balancing myself of like, why am I moving so fast? It's just because what I was used to. And I notice even when I come back, then I'm like, and I can really get going fast. And there's a time and a place for it.
So these days, how often are you saying no to people?
A lot.
Okay.
A lot. And, you know...
And it's not maybe no forever. It could be no for now, right?
Yep. No for right now. I just refuse to take on as much as I used to. I used to take on so much. So even in my coaching work, you know, I have opportunities to take on multiple projects. Now I'd like to just take on 1 to 2 big projects. So I'm only dealing with a certain group of people versus dealing with all these people all the time.
But when you first start out, were you qualified to get the bigger projects anyway?
Even if I wasn't, I got them.
Oh, okay.
Purely from, you know, tenacity and being able to sell myself isn't the right word, but confidently, you know, portray what value I felt that I could bring. Yeah. I've always been able to do that.
I feel like the trajectory for most creative entrepreneurs is to do more, like as far as quantity. Not that your quality is, you know, less, but as you gain more experience under your belt, you can raise your prices, and then you don't have to do as much or as many anymore. Yeah,
and it's like the energy exchange that I get from speaking to a room of 400 people is amazing.
It's just,
it's an hour or 2 of my time, but something that I prepare for weeks for.
Sure.
You know, I really do prepare for that for weeks. So that's one avenue, but like taking on full-time work, I'll do calls, one-off calls. You'll call me and say, hey, I'm just having a problem with this. What kind of licensing do I need? Or do you know anything? How can I hire better? Or how can I delegate work better? Those are super fun, and I can do it from everywhere. So that's amazing for van life. But then like taking on bigger projects, now I've said no to projects that like either aligned with my former self or just don't feel as connected to me. And I only want to do things that I'm like hyper passionate about, that I really, really love, because I think it's important what we work on and who we work with.
Yeah.
You know, that shapes our future. So I definitely want to be doing things that I really care about. I've been working with High Vibe now. Juice is my jam. So it's like, yes, that's a yes for me. That makes the most sense. Do you know my Instagram handle used to be Jenn and Juice?
Maybe you mentioned that. I forgot. That's hilarious.
I missed that handle.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, that makes the most sense moving forward. So I've had to say no to a lot of stuff that I would be interested in, but it's just like, man, does it fan my flame? Does it really get me going? And that's what I've kind of asked myself.
Yeah, I mean, I told you, like, going back to just being a generalist as a photographer, I don't know if every wedding would fan my flame.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? Like,
I'm sure there are some brutal couples out there.
Oh my God. Do you know what's so funny? One huge thing that was, I think, a beautiful shift in the early days of COVID is like the wedding. Remember, the wedding industry totally changed. Then everyone was doing like those 20-person outdoor weddings.
Micro weddings, yeah.
Listen, when that happened, I'm like, we won. The human race has won. Because I felt so internally conflicted for years talking to people. I talked to them intimately for 10 or 15 minutes a day when I was doing that times, 30 a day, and hearing the same themes and hearing the same stories and realizing how much money we're putting into a single day. But I did not hear in any of those conversations the intention you're putting into the foundation of your marriage. You're focused on the day, but the day comes and goes. What's your intention in the marriage?
It makes me want to elope.
I'm telling you. When the micro weddings happened, I thought it was the most beautiful because it was the most bare, stripped down version of what I think that really is. It's a commitment between two people and their families and friends before God, right? That's what it was. That's what it historically has been. And, that goes into celebrity culture and all the things that I talked about before, but it has just become such a spectacle. And what is the why of why you're doing this? That's why I say if I ever get married again, it probably won't be legally because I'm not trying to get the government involved in my love life. Thank you, but no. But it'll be on a mountaintop somewhere with me and my person and maybe 5 people. That's it. I have no desire.
Putting it out there, guys. she's waiting.
It really would. It really would.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's how I feel about that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Slow down, find the why.
Yeah, maybe that's like a thread of this whole conversation is like, what's your why in everything that you're doing? Question yourself. Seriously object to your own shit. Is that your fear talking or is that really your heart? And when your heart's talking, are you shutting it up and putting it in the corner? Because she never stops speaking. He never stops speaking, whatever. It never stops talking to us.
Yeah, I mean, from an evolutionary standpoint, we're led by fear, right? We're avoidant of fear. So whatever scares us, we run the opposite direction.
Instead of, and that exhausts us, right? Instead of facing things head on and trusting and knowing that you can overcome anything. And there's plenty of examples out there in the world of people that we know that are inspiring to others that have proven that. So that's kind of the take the stance that I want to take is like, I just want to be an example for people of someone who never fucking gave up, But now I'm someone who doesn't like force things to go a certain way.
Sure.
So I don't resist the flow of what's happening.
You're not necessarily giving up though.
No. It's just like learning to work with energy differently.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jenn.
Thank you.
This was a pleasure.
Yes, always. I always love talking to you.
We'll get a tour of Rosie soon.
Yes.
But thank you guys. It was like almost 2 hours.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Yeah, here we are.
So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you in the next episode.
See you later.